Of all the IEMs that I have ever personally tested, I think I've just found the one truest, cleanest, most transparent IEM that I highly recommend for professionals. The wide and open soundstage mixed with a level of airiness without fatigue hits different on this IEM. This is the Twistura Woodnote mid-range IEM that I highly recommend for everybody except bass heads, and I will explain further later on. The Twistura Woodnote comes with 3 pairs of tuning filters, along with 4 types of ear tips with 3 pairs each, allowing you to tune your set on a hardware level and depending on your preference. This is a feature that I highly recommend even for beginners, so you get to play around with tunings that you want. We will go over each tuning filter later on, and before we get ahead of ourselves, I am Daniel with the Biboyharanero team. We've been reviewing keyboards, mice, and audio gear since 2019, so consider subscribing so you're always updated with our new video uploads every week. Back to the Woodnote. This only has an impedance of 18 ohms, so it's really easy to drive and no powerful amplification is needed. Inside is a 10mm dynamic driver within that has a dual magnet and dual chamber feature. It also has a wooden diaphragm, which is the first that I am ever testing. Then the overall build quality of the IEM along with everything inside the box is very good. Let's go over that here real quick. Inside the box, you get the IEM, carrying case, 4 sets of ear tips with 3 pairs each, cable, 3.5mm tip and 4.4 balance tip, 2 pairs of extra tuning filters, and some documentation. First and foremost, I love that the premium carrying case is coated with PU leather and has very good crush resistance. It almost looks like a box for a proposal ring. Onto the cable, this is very high quality and is versatile, having the replaceable termination be a 3.5mm or 4.4mm balance tip. It's a mix of oxygen-free copper, silver copper alloy, and graphene copper. And to be honest, I'm not really sure how this affects the overall cable performance, yet I really like its color and thickness too. I do have one issue with it, and that's with the ear hooks being a little too wide for my ears. It doesn't wrap around my ears the way I want it to, and it's a little loose. Check this out. So I have here the cable of the Twistura Woodnote. I have a different IEM attached to it because the Twistura is right there in my testing table. Anyways, if you can see, it's a little loose around the back of my ears. So I want my cables to wrap around the back of my ear going down to the bottom of my earlobe right here. But it's not. I think you're gonna need, here my baby there, but anyways, you're gonna need a heat gun to be able to manipulate that plastic around the ear hook, which I don't have a heat gun with me, so probably a lighter would do, but yeah, it's easily fixable though. Now going over the ear tips, you get a lot of options to choose from, but I opted to go with the wide bore tips. I can't really say how each of the tips sound because it will differ from ear to ear. These wide bore tips are really interesting because you see fins in between the outer layer and the stem. To be honest, I don't know how it affects the overall sound, but it should improve the sub-bass extension. Anyways, let's go over the IEM itself. This is made of CNC aluminum alloy, and one key feature of the IEM build is the huge vent near the cable input. This allows for more airflow, improving detail and high frequencies, but this decreases bass extension and most especially punches. The drivers aren't too big, and they also have a silicone around the bottom of the IEM so you can grip it easily, taking it in or out of your ear. Going over the tuning filters, you get one for standard, voice enhanced, and instrumental, each differing in treble response, having less treble on the standard tuning filter and the most treble response from the instrumental tuning filter. Most of my tests were done with the instrumental tuning filter as I personally need that high frequency detail and brightness. Now on to sound. I have so many good things to say about it, but first, I would like to start with what people may not potentially like, and that is with the sometimes clinical presentation of the IEM. And with a clinical presentation, this definitely is not for bass heads, as the bass response is not at the level that would make your head bang. The tuning prioritizes balance and transparency, which is what I highly recommend for professionals like video editors or people who mix and master audio. But don't get me wrong, the tuning on the Woodnote is not flat, as it has a mild V-shaped tuning and has customizable tuning depending on the ear tips and tuning filters you apply. And with the instrumental tuning filters on and the wide bore tips that this comes with, these are my thoughts. First off, The soundstage is very open and wide, and I really love that the subtle nuances in the highs and the upper mids sound very good. This only has one dynamic driver within, yet the performance is astounding given the sound separation that I hear. And with that said, layering is on point and really justifies the price you're paying for this set. Onto the mids, I think that this has ample detail and body without making vocals sound shouty or nasal. I love the level that this set produces around 3000 Hz region as guitar solos easily cut through even the busiest of mixes. Then, same goes for the lower mids that aren't overshadowed by the bass. And speaking of bass, the best word that I could describe it is controlled. It's strategically pulled back so it doesn't muffle the sound in the other frequencies, and it's also not too recessed to sound flat. Perfect balance everywhere in the highs, mids, and lows, and I rate the sound of this IEM very close to 10 out of 10. I personally do not like bass and I prefer bright tunings, so I do have a bias towards technical and clinical sets. And with that said, I would not recommend the Twistura or Woodnote to bass lovers. Bass heads may find the low-end action a little bit lacking in energy. Moving on to professional work though, with the open soundstage and airy presentation, I highly recommend this for vocal monitoring. Apply the standard tuning filters and match this with wide bore tips, then you get a tuning that will reproduce your voice naturally. I would also recommend the same tuning setup for mixing and mastering, yet I do have to warn professionals again that this is not entirely a flat-tuned IEM. It is close to being reference-tuned, but not entirely. However, I still would say that the detail and balance throughout the spectrum would be beneficial for intricate sound engineering. Now, as a gamer, I had to test this out in shooter games just to see the overall performance, and the number one thing that I checked for is footstep projection. The Woodnote did not disappoint and even surprised me how the low-mid action on this set is really forward. And regardless of how noisy the environment gets, the footsteps are easily picked out. Plus, with its tuning, I could use this gaming for hours and hours without any fatigue. I think open world games is where this would shine because of the wide soundstage that reproduces environmental sounds very naturally. I'm very happy to have had the chance to work with this set, and it's really difficult for me to let it go because of the level of performance that is very rare, to be honest. Anyways, there's that. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comment section below. I will leave links in the description for you to access and get your Twistura Woodnote from. I'll see you guys again next time.